Well, thanks everybody. It's great to be here. Always great to be in Toronto. I got a little bit of a different background. I've been an investor all my life, and I run a private, successful, sort of best-in-class private business. So now running a public company is different. One of my, when I invest often, I find a lot of people might be brilliant engineers and geologists, but they run a Main Street business and counter the paper clips, and I try and bring that to our sort of mantra. We'll have some forward-looking statements as per Gary. We'll talk about some things that might not happen. We try to protect ourselves. So our flagship asset is in Atlin, British Columbia. It's called the the Ruby Creek Molybdenum Project. Former operator was ADNAC Molybdenum. We have an interesting project in the Yukon called the Q Project. We have a sort of a STX zinc project, sort of in Revelstoke, and a Thompson River nickel project. And we've also got an interesting sort of copper play. We like staking things ourselves. We're value investors. We don't want to chase anything in Arizona called Lindsay. We have 46.4 million shares outstanding. We have very high insider, almost 40%, and that doesn't include at least 20% of our stock are held by long-time sort of fly fishing customers and associates of mine that know what I'm like, and I know their families, and they're long-term investors. They're in the seed rounds. They don't sell their stock. We're very lucky, and if we ever need money, we can always sort of get it internally. It's quite unusual to have that. We've also, Eric Sprott's been a key insider. He's been 5 or 6 of our financings, but we've had institutional support from Sprott Asset Management and Middlefield as well. I draw a very low salary of a couple $1,000s a month. My money is sort of where my mouth is. A couple of years ago, my wife and I wrote $186,000 in checks, and I took a $24,000 salary. So I often meet managers of companies. I own more shares than they do, so that's a bit of a turnoff. Run a really low G&A. We use one of my fly fishing stores as an office. And I think our G&A is about $450,000 a year, but that includes about $100,000 in marketing and about $120,000 by VPX. So we can run a really, really low burn rate. And right now, this is a little bit out of date. We have a little over $1.45 million in the bank, but we're also waiting for about $150,000 in refunds. And to us, that's a fair amount of money. I'll talk about this stuff later. You're only as good as your team is one of my mottos, and I'm very, very proud of my team. Again, that's my fly fishing business. I'm blessed to have amazing staff members. This is an interesting picture right here. It's the Ruby Creek Project. And I first want to acknowledge our project lies in the unceded territory of the Taku River Tlingit First Nations, and it's a privilege, not a right, to explore within their territory, and we're very happy with them. But you can see this project, it truly is shovel-ready. I mean, we went into construction. The former operator was ADNAC Molybdenum. They had a market cap at one point of about $300 million and a $700 million credit facility. It went through bankable feasibility, EAC, and it went into construction. Unfortunately, just in 2008, the price of molybdenum collapsed, and we bought the asset out of bankruptcy for $2.5 million in cash and shares. And you buy stuff when it's cheap and out of favor and no one cares about it. That's how you build great companies. It's a fairly large land package. It's 31,000 hectares in size, 14 kilometers east of Atlin, British Columbia. Hosts the Ruby Creek Molybdenum deposit. There's quite an interesting gold camp. Gary's got some projects right next to us, and there's 10 significant placer creeks in the Atlin area, and 7 of the 10 touch our tenors. Other than molybdenum, very little modern exploration down in the area. I think Gary's really the only one that's done some modern work, and we have a lot of drill-ready targets, but we're reluctant to go into a lot of greenfields exploration with such an advanced sort of brownfields asset that we have. Won't talk too much about this one. So we hired a very conservative firm, Stephen Richardelli and MDA, to do a resource update. We want to lure the most conservative people out there. People said, why would you ever hire Dr. Doom to do a resource and he'll destroy your project? No, we have a good project and we're confident of that. They chose to use a 0.02 cut-off grade, come up with a measured and indicated 433 million pound moly resource. That's a pit-constrained resource. It's not a global resource. That's just within a 45-degree pit wall. Inferred, if you read, I encourage you to read the report because it states the deposit is open in 3 directions. We can very easily convert the inferred to measured and indicated by tightening the spacing. And we're 275 kilometers away from Skagway, which is an ice-free seaport. And we have a very high-grade hole 8417, which bottomed out in 45 meters of 0.23. Henderson, the world's, we call our project a climax-style deposit, named after Freeport's Climax deposit in Colorado. And they have Climax as open pit. I'm heard it's running out of ore, but it's been there for 100 years. Amazing project. and nearby Henderson's underground, and they tunnel the ore to the processing at Climax. It's a very elaborate operation, but their grade's 0.2. So having a hole, just outside the pit with 46 meters of 0.23 is certainly worth following up on. Again, it's road accessible. The former operator used lead core, upgraded the road from a Forest Service road to a haul road. And we have a BC Mines Act permit in place, which is we don't have EAC. The EAC's lapsed. Last year, what we did is we reviewed the old environmental assessment, and we did a desktop review and hired the same people that did the old one. And again, it's open in multiple directions. It's a Climax-style deposit. It's very, very clean. It doesn't have sulfides. It's not a moly. It's a lot cheaper to process and mine a pure play moly than it is to moly sort of the copper moly. Most molybdenum is byproduct from copper, but you typically have two different circuits to get them both out and lower recoveries. Again, I got to be careful what I say because I'm referring to a feasibility study that we didn't do, but the former operator had a very much higher grade starter pit and very shallow. They had 0.65 strip ratio from the starter pit, which is very, very low. So it's a very shallow project. This is a picture of the resource right here. And there's, oh, sorry, I guess I didn't know to use the pointer properly. I don't know how I go back the way. That's red button, okay, yeah. You can see the very left hole 8417 on the bottom, the western end of the high-grade hole. And so that sort of it gives you an idea of where the project is. And you've seen it's a nice located in a gentle terrain. One thing that's interesting is when we did our resource update, these people are very conservative. They says, hey, listen, you're economic right now. You should start going on a PEA. And we started on a PA, and we said, well, let's actually price building a new mine. And we fell out of our seats, and halfway through we stopped. Because, like the old operator was in the $700 million range, we're well over $1 billion. And that's not us, that's everybody. So resource prices have to move up dramatically, otherwise there'll be none. Because the OPEX and CAPEX have gone up so much. Like, for example, $4 copper, nothing's going to make sense. Copper has to go to $10 to $15, and it will. Just like copper went from 40 cents a pound to $4, there won't be any. So if you believe we have a future, we don't need any metals. But prices have been tremendous underinvestment in the sector. And it's a great opportunity to get in the bottom. One thing that we're encouraged about, last year we sort of chose to preserve our cash and try and say, where can we best spend our money? And we knew of a prospect to the north of us that Placer had drilled, another porphyry molybdenum target. And when the ground was dropped, we staked it. And this past year, we went up there, and we come by our booth. We found some really nice mineralized outcrops, high-grade, visible moly. Some of these outcrops we found were up to a kilometer away from where Placer drilled, and there's 900 meters between mineralized. So we want to run some geophysics on it this year. We're trying to attract a partner, but we really believe having sort of a cluster of deposits in the area will really help us, because we have been in talks with some big people. It's a little small for the big boys, but having a satellite nearby might really help. And you'll come on by and have a look at some of the samples. And there's also, it's within 3 kilometers of a road. All of our projects are road accessible. People don't understand that much about molybdenum. Molybdenum, the World Bank stated it's a green energy metal. Certainly wind turbine gearboxes. The 130 kilograms per megawatt you need in the last 25 years to be really hard and be really durable. But molybdenum is used, 39% of molybdenum is used for strengthening and lightening steel. When you add, what is steel? It's iron and constituents, and moly is a key additive. But if you want stronger steel, like for buildings, by adding molybdenum, it gets stronger, so you can really reduce the weight. Also, the cars in Germany, the German auto manufacturers found out by adding more moly to the car building process, they lighten cars up, and we all know we need lighter electric cars. 22% is for stainless and corrosion. The reason moly went viral in the early 2000s was the pipeline build out in the Western Sedimentary Basin. You have corrosive natural gas, buried pipelines, very moly intensive. Also, any high temperature applications, engine blocks, and that high moly. But it's a bit obscure as far as investors know, because it's the domain of the big steel companies. So it's a bit of a different commodity. But we joined the International Molybdenum Association recently, and global usage last year in 2022 rose 3% to 631.5 million pounds. So it's over $20 a pound. It's a big, big market. And production also fell, so it's quite a shortage. Last year was a dramatic sudden spike in the price of moly, and people said, well, what happened? Why did it go up like it did? And we said, well, we don't really know, but I listened to Freeport-McMoran's conference call, and they just said it's a very tight market. And we believe the port shut down for a couple of weeks, but apparently German steel mills were screaming for moly, and they were flying in emergency shipments. But it's a tight market because 80% of moly is byproduct copper and 20% is pure play. This is also literally the cleanest type of open pits you can run, Climax-style deposits, not full of sulfides, very clean. And open pit mining is messy as it is, so, but it is very clean. And they had a 90% metallurgical recovery with the other operator. And the World Bank has singled out molybdenum as involved in 7 and 9 green energy initiatives. And geothermal is a big growth area too, because you have a high temperature water and you have corrosion, Molly. I believe it's a generational opportunity for people to get involved in these sectors. Like, we're sitting with a $9 million market cap with $1.5 million in the bank, so like a $7.5 million enterprise value, which is embarrassingly low, but that's the same for many people. Yeah, so it's a very interesting space. Just briefly, there's some of the samples we've had over the years. That's pure molybdenite, that's moly disulfide. It's called molybdenite. There's a chart of that sudden price spike, but we got this project. Moly was under it was $7 a pound and nobody cared. Now it's holding 20 really well. I looked today and all the futures were over $20 a pound. So it's an interesting metal. We've identified 4 high-priority silver targets with surface samples up to 16,000 all around the project. Ruffner's been in production in the past. We've got all the gold down there. Gary's got most of the gold on his land, but there's definitely to the south, further down south is where you get all the gold. We run geophysics on the project. It's interesting. We believe that it shows up really well in the geophysics, so we can run that at Volcanic Creek and, again, show the big boys what we have. We have a very interesting zinc project in Revelstoke. That's all Teck. That land in the middle belongs to Teck with a very large resource. Some of the best drill holes lie on our land. We've run geophysics on it. We got an interesting, very early stage project in the Yukon. It was held for a family since the 60s, and they trusted us to give it to us and knew we'd steward it properly and respect their claims. And we have a project in Manitoba we staked ourselves with a 165-meter hit of 0.32 nickel in the past. The geophysics was done after the drilling was done. We'd love to drill the top of the anomalies now. We've received permission from the Manitoba government, but the First Nations aren't happy, so we're not drilling against their will. The government's saying, go ahead and drill. Say, no, we refuse to do that. We have to respect the First Nations. So our projects are new. They're all road accessible. That's our mandate. They're underexplored with high potential. To us, it's well-funded, but we have business savvy management, a tight share structure. We're blessed to have Eric Sprott backing us. We're looking for a strategic, certainly based on a resource. You're not going to find companies that measured and indicate a very advanced project with a low value like us in an important base metal. We have some great greenfields projects. It's a critical element. Our deck isn't full of all the stuff about critical and Elon Musk did this. It's just, we all know that. And we're very nimble and cost effective. The money we raise goes into the ground. In 2022, I asked our CFO, Yan, I said, how much we spent the last 6 months? She said $972,000 in exploration. And how much salaries? We'd drawn 26,000 salaries. The ratio was actually 35 to 1. That meant for every dollar we took in salaries, 35 bucks went in the ground. Most companies, you're lucky for 50 cents. And we really respect our shareholders. My shareholders are the most important people, and I'm a big shareholder. And I'm also really honored to have Chen sponsor us. I think Chen's the best newsletter writer out there. He's unbiased and a very smart guy. And thank everybody for the time. Come by our booth. Thank you.